But first, we now have an even better idea of what being under existential threat looks like. Rockets raining down on people's homes, innocent people taken hostage, and civilians massacred in the street in cold blood. Now, what's happening in Israel is a horror show. The Islamist fanatics behind the slaughter in Israel don't simply want to destroy the Jewish state, but quite literally drive the Israeli people into the sea as part of their vicious death to the infidel ideology. This was a completely unprovoked attack driven by malice and hate. Yes, the Gaza Strip is poor and crowded, but as Israel has proven time and time again, it's more than happy to be a good neighbour, provided the Palestinian leadership is prepared to accept Israel's right to exist behind secure borders and to stop the incessant hate against the Jewish people. For years now, it's been assumed that Israeli technical mastery, plus the pragmatic leadership of countries like Egypt, the Gulf states and even Saudi Arabia, was making Israel more secure. But if Iran was still threatening mayhem and arming Palestinian terror groups, including, as the Wall Street Journal reports, in these terror attacks over the weekend, what happened in Israel on Saturday has rightly been likened to 9/11, and it shows that the price of peace really is eternal vigilance. That you can't count on a determined enemy not to find ways of thwarting the best laid defences and to strike when you least expect it. That there's no line a terrorist won't cross, including abducting infants, the elderly, women and children, and slaughtering innocent civilians. What matters now, apart from defeating this incursion and trying to ensure that no country or movement thinks it's safe to threaten Israel, is to end the moral equivalence we are seeing from leaders who should know better, implying that terrorist groups on the one hand and the Israeli government on the other hand can be just as bad as each other. There was a hint of this in our Foreign Minister Penny Wong's call over the weekend for Israel to show restraint, she said, in its response. Now, I ask restraint? Where's the restraint from Hamas, with over 700 Israelis now confirmed dead? When your citizens are murdered in cold blood and terror gangs are roaming the streets inside your borders, the last thing you need is someone as senior as Australia's own Foreign Minister counselling impartiality between the fire brigade and the fire. Israeli security forces sometimes make mistakes, as all do, even our own. But there's a world of moral difference between the only liberal democracy in the Middle East, where all faiths can freely practice their religion, where the Supreme Court can routinely challenge the government, and where all minorities are represented in the parliament, and on the other hand, the militant terrorist enclaves of Gaza and the West Bank, where poverty is used by the terrorists as a device to keep hatred alive. It's also important to remember, especially here in Australia, where we have no enemies on our borders, the world can be a very dangerous place. And to focus more on the real challenges we face, as opposed to all the first world problems that tend to preoccupy our political class. Now, I wonder how many Israelis are fretting right now about climate change or trans rights or wearing masks on public transport. But lest we all think every Australian thinks as we do about the right of Israeli citizens to live free and safe in their own country, these scenes in Sydney should horrify us all.
I'm smiling and I'm happy. I'm elated. It's a day of courage. It's a day of happiness. It's a day of pride. It's a day of victory. This is the day we've been waiting for.
This preacher, this Muslim imam, is Ibrahim Dadoun. And here he is at a recent iftar dinner this year with the Prime Minister. Dadoun, who gave the closing prayer in the Prime Minister's presence, here he is not some random wayward cleric who's crossed a line in Sydney on the weekend, but someone with repugnant views, horrific views, that no Australian can possibly support, who we now know has the ear of our national leader. Now, as I said, the price of peace is eternal vigilance, as much here in Australia as everywhere else, that we do not sanction this sort of intolerance and hatred in our own country, that we stand with Israel and we condemn these attacks on the world stage.